Japanese CEO confuses everyone. Shy waitress translates and uncovers the shocking truth. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The lunchtime rush at Willow Shore Bistro was steady but gentle, the kind of late morning hum that felt almost safe. Plates clinked softly. Chairs slid across the wooden floor. And in the center of it all moved a quiet young woman named Maya, a waitress who seemed to breathe in silence and exhale calm. Most days she blended into the background, moving with a soft steadiness that made her easy to overlook. But on this day, something would pull her into a spotlight she never asked for. The front door opened with a gust of spring air, and in walked a sharply dressed man in a charcoal suit. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable, and his presence seemed to draw the attention of every table without a single word. He was a visiting Japanese chief executive officer, a man whose company had arrived in town for an important business expansion. Two American associates flanked him, both looking tense, as if they were already behind schedule. The host guided them to a table near the window, and almost immediately the conversation between the executives grew strained. The Japanese chief executive officer spoke softly but rapidly, his words flowing in a language no one nearby understood. His American associates exchanged helpless glances, their forced smiles tightening with each second. Maya walked past their table carrying a tray of water glasses, her head slightly bowed as usual. But then she heard it, a phrase spoken under the breath of the Japanese visitor, a phrase filled with frustration and resignation. His two associates kept nodding politely even though their confused eyes said they had understood nothing. Maya paused. Her grip on the tray tightened just a little. The Japanese chief executive officer continued speaking, this time louder, and the tone in his voice made several diners look over, concerned. The American associates looked ready to crumble under the pressure. Maya set down the water glasses at a nearby table, her breath steady but her pulse rising, as if some old part of herself had awakened. She stepped closer. Her voice was soft, careful, almost hesitant. Sir, do you need assistance with communication? The American associates turned to her with relief, but the Japanese chief executive officer fixed his eyes on Maya, puzzled. Then she spoke again, this time in fluent Japanese, her voice clear but gentle. The entire restaurant fell silent. Conversations froze. Forks stopped midair. The Japanese chief executive officer blinked, stunned, and slowly lowered the menu in his hand. Maya had not just understood him. She had responded with perfect intonation, perfect structure, perfect respect. And hidden inside the words she translated was a truth he had never expected anyone in this room to understand. A truth that would change the entire direction of his visit. And in that breathless moment, the shy waitress everyone overlooked became the only person in the room who held the real story in her hands. As Maya stood there, her words still echoing through the quiet restaurant, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. The Japanese CEO, his expression unreadable at first, stared at Maya with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. His associates, who had been fidgeting in their seats, slowly began to relax, their tension lifting as they realized someone had finally understood their boss. Maya, a quiet waitress whose presence was often overlooked, had just turned the tide of the conversation with a simple but powerful act. She had translated his words perfectly, and in doing so, revealed something that no one had anticipated. The CEO studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You speak Japanese," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of surprise. Maya nodded, her face still calm, though she couldn't help but feel a slight flutter of nervousness deep inside. "Yes, I do. I lived in Japan for a few years," she replied, keeping her voice polite and neutral, careful not to give away too much. The CEO leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze never leaving her face. "I did not expect a waitress in America to speak my language so fluently," he admitted. "And I certainly did not expect you to understand the urgency of what I was trying to convey." Maya offered a small, almost apologetic smile. "I heard your tone. It wasn't hard to understand." She could feel the weight of the moment, the eyes of the other patrons lingering on her, some with confusion, others with curiosity. It wasn't every day that a simple waitress got the chance to converse with a high-powered CEO in the middle of a busy restaurant. The CEO's demeanor shifted, his interest peaked. "What else do you know about what I was saying?" he asked. Maya hesitated, unsure if she should continue. But something in the CEO's tone, something in the way he was looking at her now, made her feel that perhaps this was more than just a passing conversation. Perhaps this moment had the potential to change everything. "You were discussing the contract with your business partners back in Japan," she said cautiously, "and how they're misinterpreting some key clauses, which could lead to a significant financial loss if you move forward without addressing those issues." There it was. The truth that Maya had uncovered through just a few words spoken by the CEO. His associates, still oblivious to the magnitude of the conversation, exchanged nervous glances. The CEO's expression darkened as Maya spoke. It was clear he had been too distracted by other matters to notice the subtle flaws in the agreement he was about to finalize. For a moment, he was silent, his mind racing. Maya, on the other hand, felt a sudden sense of responsibility, as if she had stumbled into something much bigger than herself. She had just opened a door that had been carefully closed off by powerful people for a reason. "You understand business contracts," the CEO said, his voice softer now, almost thoughtful. Maya shrugged lightly. "I have a degree in business, actually. I just never got the chance to put it to use." The words came out before she could stop them. She had always kept her past a secret, never wanting to stand out or draw attention to herself. But now, standing before this powerful man, it felt strangely freeing to speak her truth. "Why aren't you using your degree?" the CEO asked, genuinely curious. Maya looked down at the table, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the plate. "Life happened," she said, her voice quiet. "I had to put everything on hold." The CEO studied her for a moment longer, his mind working furiously. He was beginning to realize that Maya was not just some quiet waitress. She was someone who understood much more than she let on. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was someone who could help him. "Maya, I have a proposition for you," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Maya looked up, her heart racing. She hadn't expected this. "What kind of proposition?" she asked, her voice betraying her hesitation. The CEO leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "I need someone who can look at my company's contracts with fresh eyes. Someone who isn't bound by the usual corporate mindset. Someone who can find the mistakes that others overlook. And I believe you're the person for the job." Maya was stunned. She had always dreamed of a career in business, but this was far beyond anything she had imagined. She had spent so many years in the background, quietly working to support herself, that the thought of being recognized for her talents was overwhelming. "You want me to help you with your company's contracts?" she asked, almost incredulously. The CEO nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I believe you have the skills to help us avoid a disaster. And I'm willing to offer you a position as my personal consultant." Maya's mind raced. This was everything she had ever wanted, yet it was also terrifying. She had been living a quiet, unassuming life, and now, suddenly, her world was being turned upside down. She glanced at the CEO, who was watching her closely, waiting for her response. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Maya spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can accept that offer," she said, her hands trembling slightly. "It's not just about the job. It's about everything that comes with it." The CEO's expression softened. "I understand," he said quietly, "but I believe you have the potential to do something extraordinary. I wouldn't be offering this if I didn't think you were the right person for the job." Maya took a deep breath. She had always played it safe, always stayed in the background, but now, for the first time in her life, she felt like she was being offered an opportunity she couldn't ignore. She had the chance to step into a new world, a world of power and influence. But was she ready for it? Maya sat quietly in the back of the bustling restaurant, her mind still reeling from the conversation she'd had with the Japanese CEO, Mr. Hiroshi Takeda. Just a few hours ago, she was a simple waitress, blending into the background of the lively Willow Shore Bistro. Now, her life was about to change, and she wasn't sure whether she was ready for it. The CEO's offer to become a personal consultant was something she had never imagined in her wildest dreams. It seemed too good to be true, yet the look in his eyes told her that he was serious. As she cleared a table near the back corner, Maya couldn't shake the thought that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But was it? She had worked so hard to keep her past hidden, her education, her experiences abroad, everything. Maya had chosen this quiet life to escape the pressure and expectations she had faced in her previous career. But now, Mr. Takeda was offering her a chance to step back into the world she had left behind. She was torn. A part of her wanted to embrace the challenge, to prove that she was more than just the waitress everyone assumed she was. But another part of her was terrified of the unknown. Would she be able to handle it? Was she strong enough to stand up to the powerful forces in the corporate world? As she wiped down the counter, the sound of a soft ring from her phone interrupted her thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Takeda. I hope you are doing well, Maya. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I believe you are the right person for the job. Please come by my office tomorrow at noon. I would like to discuss the details. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, her fingers hovering over the screen. She had already agreed to meet him, but now the reality of the situation was sinking in. What had she gotten herself into? She had always thought that the world of business was out of reach for someone like her. But now, with Mr. Takeda's offer on the table, she had the chance to prove herself. It was a chance to reclaim the life she had once dreamed of, a life of success, influence, and respect. She put her phone down and took a deep breath. This was her moment. She could either let fear control her or take the leap and see where it would take her. But there was no turning back now. The next day, Maya stood in front of the towering glass building that housed Mr. Takeda's office. The sleek structure seemed to swallow her up, making her feel smaller than ever. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The receptionist greeted her with a polite smile and directed her to the elevator. Maya couldn't help but feel out of place in the polished, corporate environment. She was used to the humble setting of the bistro, where she was comfortable and in control. But this was different. This was a world where power and money dictated everything. As the elevator ascended, Maya's heart raced. She tried to push aside the thoughts of self-doubt that were creeping into her mind. She had made it this far, hadn't she? She had been chosen for this opportunity, and she wasn't going to waste it. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a sleek, modern office with a breathtaking view of the city. Mr. Takeda was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. He turned to face her as she entered. Maya, I'm glad you could make it, he said, his voice calm but commanding. He gestured to a chair in front of his desk. Maya took a seat, her hands folded in her lap. Thank you for having me, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Mr. Takeda sat down across from her, his piercing eyes studying her. I've thought a lot about our conversation yesterday, he said, and I want you to know that I'm not offering you this position out of charity. I believe in your abilities. You've already demonstrated a level of insight that most people take years to develop. Maya blinked, surprised by his words. She had never been one to seek praise, and she certainly wasn't used to hearing such direct compliments. But it felt good, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like maybe she was capable of more than she had believed. Thank you, she replied, her voice soft. I just want to do the best I can. Mr. Takeda nodded. I know you will. Now, let's discuss the specifics of your role. You'll be working closely with me on various projects, especially regarding our contracts and business partnerships. We need someone who can look at things from a different perspective, someone who isn't bound by the usual corporate mindset. And that's where you come in. Maya felt a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. She had been in the corporate world before, but this was different. This wasn't just about climbing the ladder. This was about making a real impact. I'm ready, she said, her voice firm. Mr. Takeda smiled slightly, a glint of approval in his eyes. I knew you would be. The meeting continued with more details about her role and the challenges ahead. Maya listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities. This was what she had been waiting for, an opportunity to show the world what she was capable of. But little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would not only challenge her skills, but also force her to confront parts of her past that she had long buried. As she left the office later that afternoon, Maya felt a surge of confidence. She had taken the first step into a new world, and there was no turning back now. Maya's first day at Takeda Enterprises was a whirlwind of new faces, meetings, and unfamiliar office spaces. As she walked into the towering glass building, her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had left her quiet life behind, and now she was stepping into the fast-paced world of corporate business, a world that was full of power, money, and influence. Her first task was simple enough: attend a briefing on the upcoming contract negotiations with an international partner. The stakes were high, and the pressure was palpable. Mr. Takeda had made it clear that he expected her to be an active participant, not just an observer. As she sat down in the conference room, she tried to steady her nerves. The room was sleek, with large windows that offered a stunning view of the city below. She was surrounded by executives, all of whom were much older and more experienced than she was. But Maya had something they didn't: a fresh perspective. Mr. Takeda entered the room, and the chatter immediately quieted down. He took his seat at the head of the table, his presence commanding and authoritative. "Maya, I'm glad you could join us today," he said, his voice steady and calm. "We're about to discuss the terms of a deal that could change the future of our company. I need you to provide your insights, especially regarding the contract's language." Maya nodded, trying her best to suppress the growing feeling of being out of place. She had spent years studying contracts and business strategies, but this was different. This was the real deal, not a classroom exercise. As the meeting unfolded, Maya listened intently, absorbing every word. The executives around the table were discussing the finer points of the agreement, but Maya quickly realized that there were discrepancies in the clauses, hidden terms that could potentially harm the company's long-term interests. She raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "Mr. Takeda, if I may," she said, her voice slightly trembling but steady enough to command attention. "There's an issue with this clause here." She pointed to a section of the contract on the screen in front of them. "The language seems to suggest that our company will be liable for certain penalties if we don't meet specific benchmarks, but there's no clear definition of what those benchmarks are." A hush fell over the room as everyone turned to look at her. Mr. Takeda's expression was unreadable, but the executives around the table exchanged surprised glances. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. Had she just made a mistake? But then, Mr. Takeda leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "Continue," he said. Maya took a deep breath, feeling a sudden surge of confidence. "If we sign this agreement as it is, we could be held accountable for vague terms that leave us open to unnecessary risk. I suggest we reword this clause to specify the exact benchmarks and provide more clarity on the penalties." There was a long pause before one of the senior executives spoke up. "She's right," he said, sounding begrudgingly impressed. "We need to protect ourselves from any ambiguity in the agreement." Another executive nodded in agreement. "I didn't catch that." "Good catch, Maya." Mr. Takeda sat back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. He had been quiet for several moments, processing what Maya had just said. Finally, he spoke. "I see your point," he said, his tone measured. "We'll make the necessary adjustments." The meeting continued, but Maya couldn't help but feel a rush of pride. She had done it. She had made an impact, and her voice had been heard. It was the first time in years that she had felt truly valued for her skills, not just her work ethic. After the meeting, Mr. Takeda pulled her aside. "You did well today," he said, his tone warm but professional. "I'm glad I brought you on board." Maya felt a sense of validation she hadn't experienced in a long time. This was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Maya continued to prove herself. She became an invaluable asset to Mr. Takeda's team, offering insights that the senior executives had missed. But as much as she thrived in her new role, she couldn't help but feel a growing unease. There was a part of her that was still keeping her distance from this world, still holding back, afraid of what would happen if she let herself get too involved. She had left her old life behind for a reason. But the more time she spent in the corporate world, the more she realized that she couldn't hide from her past forever. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Maya found herself sitting alone in her apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had come so far, but there were still so many unanswered questions. Was this the life she really wanted? Or was she just running from something? She thought about her decision to step into this world, to leave behind the quiet life she had built for herself. She had always dreamed of making a difference, of being someone who could change the world. But now, as she sat in her small apartment, the weight of her choices began to feel heavier. She had worked so hard to keep her past a secret, but the truth was, she couldn't escape it. Her past was a part of who she was, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up with her. Maya sat in her apartment, staring out at the city skyline. The bright lights of downtown shimmered below, but in the quiet of her living room, her thoughts were far from peaceful. She had only been at Takeda Enterprises for a few weeks, but the transformation within her had been dramatic. She was no longer the shy waitress who hid in the background of life. Now, she was part of something bigger, something important. Yet the weight of it all was starting to settle heavily on her shoulders. The tension in her life was building, and she wasn't sure how long she could keep up the facade of having it all together. As she sipped her tea, her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. It was a message from Mr. Takeda. Maya, I need you to come to the office tomorrow at 10 in the morning. There is something important I'd like to discuss with you. Her heart skipped a beat. Was it another project? Or was this something more? She had a gut feeling that this wasn't just about business. The next morning, Maya arrived at Takeda Enterprises early, her mind racing. She took the elevator to the top floor and was greeted by Mr. Takeda's assistant, who directed her to his office. She knocked softly before entering, and there he was, standing by the window, looking out at the city. His usual calm demeanor was gone. He looked troubled, almost as if he was grappling with something internal. Maya, thank you for coming on short notice, he said, turning to face her. I need to speak with you about something that has come to my attention. Maya stepped further into the office, her nerves tightening. This was different. Mr. Takeda never appeared flustered. What's going on? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. It's about the contract we've been negotiating with the international partner, he said, walking toward his desk. I've just received word that there may be a problem, and I want you to be the one to help me figure it out. Maya was taken aback. What do you mean, a problem? He sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair. I have reason to believe that one of the terms we agreed upon may be used against us. If we're not careful, it could result in a significant financial setback. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. This was the kind of situation she had always dreamed of dealing with, but it was also terrifying. What do you need me to do? She asked, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions inside her. Mr. Takeda looked at her with a serious expression. I need you to review the contract, Maya. I know this is sudden, but I believe you're the right person for the job. You have a sharp mind, and your ability to think outside the box could save us from a costly mistake. He handed her a file containing the contract in question. Maya took the file, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had never been this involved in something so high stakes, but there was no turning back now. She opened the contract, scanning through the pages carefully. As she read, the same attention to detail that had helped her spot issues in previous contracts began to surface. She noticed a clause buried deep within the document, one that hadn't been brought up in any of the meetings. It was subtle but dangerous. If the terms were enforced, Takeda Enterprises could be held liable for a massive penalty if certain conditions weren't met, and those conditions were far too vague to be fully understood at first glance. She looked up from the contract, meeting Mr. Takeda's eyes. This clause could be the key to the problem, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. It's not clear enough. If the other party decides to challenge this, we could be exposed. Mr. Takeda nodded gravely. I was afraid of that. We've been so focused on the big picture that we overlooked the fine print. But you caught it. Maya felt a rush of pride. She had done it again, but she couldn't allow herself to feel too comfortable just yet. There was still so much more to be done. I'll work with the legal team to revise this, she said, her mind already racing with possible solutions. Mr. Takeda gave her a small smile, one that showed a rare hint of warmth. I knew I made the right choice bringing you on board, he said. You're proving yourself more and more each day. Maya smiled back, though her mind was already on the next step. She couldn't let her guard down now. The stakes were higher than ever, and she had to make sure that she didn't miss anything else. As the meeting came to a close, Maya stood up, ready to face the challenge ahead. I'll take care of it, she said, gathering the contract and standing tall. I won't let you down. As she left Mr. Takeda's office, Maya felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination wash over her. She was no longer the same person who had walked into Takeda Enterprises a few weeks ago. She was stronger now, more capable, and ready to take on whatever came her way. But deep down, she knew that this was just the beginning. There were far greater challenges ahead, and it was only a matter of time before her past would catch up with her. She had come this far, but could she truly leave everything behind and step fully into this new world? That was a question she would have to answer soon. But for now, she focused on the contract in her hands, knowing that every move she made from here on out would shape her future. Maya worked tirelessly over the next few days, meticulously revising the contract with the legal team and ensuring that the loopholes she had uncovered were properly addressed. The pressure was immense. She had never been part of something so critical, but she found herself thriving under the weight of the responsibility. Each day, she stayed later at the office, poring over documents and making sure everything was airtight. But as much as she threw herself into the work, something was nagging at her. Despite her success in handling the contract negotiations, a part of her still felt like an outsider. She hadn't fully embraced this new world. She had always kept her distance, but now she was being asked to step into a role that would require her to make decisions, take risks, and even face the possibility of failure. That fear, however, was quickly being replaced by a growing sense of confidence. She had proven herself time and again, and Mr. Takeda's trust in her had only bolstered her determination. One late evening, as Maya was reviewing the final drafts of the contract, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Takeda. "Maya, I need to see you tomorrow. Can you meet me at the office at noon?" The message was short, but it carried weight. Maya's stomach did a flip. The last time he had called her in for a meeting, it had been about the contract issues. What was it this time? The next day, she arrived at the office early, her mind racing. She had grown accustomed to the office environment now, but this still felt different. She was no longer just a quiet waitress or a new consultant. She was part of something larger, and the stakes were getting higher. Mr. Takeda greeted her with his usual calm demeanor, but there was a certain intensity in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. "Maya, please sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She took a seat, trying to steady her nerves. "I've been thinking about you, about your work here," he began. Maya felt her heart skip a beat. This could go one of two ways, praise or criticism, but she had learned to remain calm, no matter what. "I want to offer you a new role, one that will push you further than you've ever been pushed before," Mr. Takeda continued. Maya's mind raced. A new role? She hadn't been expecting this. "You've proven yourself in contract negotiations, but now I want you to take on more responsibility. I'm offering you a leadership position in our international projects department." The words hit her like a wave. Leadership? She had never imagined herself in such a role. But as the words sank in, she realized this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. This was her chance to make a real impact. She had been a part of the team, contributing behind the scenes, but now she was being asked to lead. What would this position entail? Maya asked, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions coursing through her. "You would be overseeing several major international contracts, including partnerships with other tech firms and startups. You'd be working closely with senior executives and leading a small team of your own," Mr. Takeda explained. Maya nodded, absorbing the details. She had always been good at managing projects, but managing a team? That was a different challenge altogether. "It's a big step," she said slowly. "Are you sure I'm ready for this?" Mr. Takeda smiled slightly. "You've already shown that you have the skills and the vision. You've been handling these contracts with great precision, and now it's time for you to take the next step. I believe in you, Maya." His words hit her with unexpected force. She had spent so many years doubting herself, never truly believing she was cut out for something bigger. But here she was, being given the chance of a lifetime. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice firm with newfound conviction. Mr. Takeda stood and walked over to the window, his gaze sweeping over the city below. "I know you won't," he said, his tone quiet but filled with belief. "This is your moment, Maya. Take it." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time since she had stepped into this corporate world, Maya felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't just an outsider anymore. She was a leader. Over the next few days, Maya threw herself into her new role. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with her team and senior executives to secure new partnerships and oversee the execution of international contracts. The work was demanding, but it was also exhilarating. She was making decisions that would impact the future of the company, and it felt incredible. But as she rose through the ranks, she also found herself facing challenges that she hadn't anticipated. She was learning just how difficult leadership could be, how much weight rested on her shoulders, and how quickly things could go wrong if she didn't stay on top of everything. There were moments when she doubted herself, moments when the pressure felt overwhelming. But each time, she reminded herself of why she was here. She was here because she had earned it, because she had the skills and the drive to succeed. And she was determined not to let this opportunity slip through her fingers. As the weeks passed, Maya's confidence grew. She had taken on this leadership role not just for the career advancement, but for the chance to prove to herself that she could do it. She was no longer the shy waitress who had stumbled into this world by chance. She was a force to be reckoned with, and no one was going to underestimate her again. Maya had always been a quiet observer, content to stay out of the limelight. But now, standing at the head of a team, making decisions that could change the course of her company, she had become someone else, someone with power, someone others looked to for guidance. She had proven herself in negotiations, in managing contracts, and now, she was starting to gain the respect of those who had once seen her as just another employee. However, with that respect came expectations. The higher she climbed, the harder it became to keep her personal life separate from her professional world. As she sat at her desk, reviewing a new set of proposals, Maya's phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Takeda. "Maya, we need to talk. I've scheduled a dinner meeting with some of our investors tomorrow night. I want you there to help present our new project." The invitation felt like a challenge, and Maya accepted without hesitation. The next night, she found herself walking into an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city, surrounded by the type of people she had once thought she could never belong to. Business executives in expensive suits, investors with an air of arrogance, and corporate bigwigs who controlled fortunes. Maya had spent so much time focused on her work that she had never truly adjusted to the extravagant lifestyle that came with the position she held now. As she walked in, her heels clicking against the polished floor, she felt the eyes of the room on her. She could sense the judgment, the whispers that followed her as she made her way to the private dining room. But she wasn't going to let it bother her. She had earned her place at this table, and tonight, she was going to prove that. Mr. Takeda greeted her as she entered, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the electric tension in the air. "Maya, I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice warm but with an undertone of business urgency. "This is an important dinner. These investors are crucial for our upcoming projects. You'll be presenting the new strategy." Maya nodded, her heart pounding, but she kept her composure. She had been preparing for this moment. She had spent countless hours drafting strategies and reviewing the business projections, and now it was time to put everything into action. As the dinner went on, Maya listened intently to the discussions, offering her insights when needed. The investors were skeptical, questioning every detail, but she stood her ground. She had come this far because of her knowledge, her ability to see through the surface, and she wasn't going to let anyone undermine her. At one point, an investor turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "So, Maya, you've been with Takeda Enterprises for only a few months, and yet here you are, leading the conversation. What makes you think your strategy is the right one?" The question was sharp, almost designed to throw her off balance. But Maya didn't falter. She met his gaze head-on, her voice steady. "Because it's not just a strategy. It's a solution. We're not just aiming for profit. We're creating value for our partners, for our clients, and for the communities we work with." She could see the investor's expression shift, the skepticism fading as he nodded thoughtfully. Mr. Takeda watched her closely, a slight smile playing on his lips. Maya felt the weight of the room on her shoulders, but she stood tall, unwavering. By the end of the evening, the investors were on board, agreeing to back the new project. Maya had done it. She had led the room with confidence, proving that she was more than capable of handling the pressure. But as she left the restaurant, a part of her felt uneasy. The world of business was demanding, and it was starting to feel like she was losing herself in the process. She had come so far, but at what cost? She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and negotiations. Maya was becoming more comfortable in her role, but the pressure was relentless. She had always been the quiet one, the one who observed from the sidelines. But now, she was at the center of it all, making decisions that affected the company's future. The higher she climbed, the more she realized how much was at stake. One afternoon, as Maya was reviewing a new project proposal, she received a call from her mother. Maya, I need to talk to you, her mother said, her voice tinged with concern. Maya's stomach tightened. It had been weeks since they last spoke, and her mother's tone instantly made her nervous. What's wrong? Maya asked, trying to keep her voice calm. It's nothing serious, but I think you should come home for a visit, her mother replied. Maya hesitated. She hadn't been home in months, too focused on her new life, her new career. She knew that her mother was worried about her, but Maya hadn't been ready to face her past. The truth was, Maya had always felt like she was running away from something. Running away from the life she once had, the person she once was. And now, as her success in the corporate world grew, she realized that the distance she had created between her old life and her new one was starting to feel more like a trap. She wasn't sure if she was ready to confront her past, but she knew that it was time. She had worked hard to get where she was, but at some point, she would have to face the truth. She couldn't keep running forever. Maya stood at the threshold of her childhood home, the familiar scent of pine and freshly cut grass filling her lungs. It had been months since she last set foot here, and the weight of those months pressed heavily on her shoulders. She had built a new life, one far removed from the quiet, modest existence she had once known. But now, standing on the porch of her mother's house, she couldn't shake the feeling that the life she had been running towards had come with a cost. Her mother answered the door with a warm smile, but Maya could see the concern in her eyes. Maya, it's good to see you, her mother said, pulling her into an embrace. Maya hugged her back, feeling the familiar comfort of her mother's arms. But something was different. How have you been? Her mother asked, her tone gentle but filled with an underlying worry. Maya hesitated. She had always been the quiet one, the one who kept her struggles to herself. But now, the weight of everything, her work, her new role, the pressure to succeed, was too much to carry alone. I've been good, Maya said, forcing a smile. Busy, you know how it is. Her mother didn't seem convinced. Maya, she said softly, you've been avoiding me. I can tell something is bothering you. Maya looked down at the floor, unsure of how to respond. She hadn't realized just how much she had been avoiding her mother, or maybe, in truth, she had been avoiding herself. I'm not sure who I am anymore, Maya admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother's expression softened, and she pulled Maya inside. Come sit down, she said, guiding her to the living room. Tell me what's going on. Maya sat down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had spent so many years trying to create a life that was distant from her past, but now she felt like she was caught between two worlds. I've changed, Maya said, looking up at her mother. I'm not the same person I used to be. Her mother nodded slowly, as if she understood exactly what Maya meant. I can see that. You've been working hard, and you've accomplished so much. But at what cost, Maya? Is all of this worth losing yourself? The question hung in the air, and for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like someone truly understood her struggle. She had been so focused on her career, on proving herself, that she had forgotten the most important thing, who she was. The version of herself she had built in the corporate world felt foreign, like a mask she had put on to fit in. I don't know if it's worth it, Maya admitted, the words tumbling out. I thought I could handle it, but the higher I go, the more I feel like I'm losing myself. I'm scared, Mom. Her mother reached over and took Maya's hands in hers, offering a comforting squeeze. It's okay to be scared, Maya, she said. But don't let fear make your decisions for you. You're not alone in this. You've always had me, and I'll be here to help you figure out what you truly want. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her mother. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy weight was being lifted off her chest. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were, Maya said softly. I don't know if I can step away from everything I've worked for. Her mother smiled gently. You don't have to go back, sweetheart. But you do need to find balance. Success is not just about achieving goals. It's about finding peace in who you are and being true to yourself. Maya nodded slowly, taking in her mother's words. It wasn't about going back to the past. It was about finding a way to move forward without losing herself. She had worked so hard to prove that she was capable, that she could thrive in this new world. But now, she realized that true success was about more than just achievements. It was about maintaining her integrity, her sense of self. Later that evening, after dinner, Maya sat on the porch with her mother, the cool evening breeze sweeping through. The trees, It felt good to be home, to be with her family again. The weight of her corporate responsibilities still lingered in the back of her mind, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a message from Mr. Takeda. "Maya, I need to talk to you. There's something urgent we need to address." Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't feel the immediate panic she once would have. She had come home to clear her mind, to reconnect with herself, and she wasn't going to let her work control her life any longer. She responded to the message, "I'll be back at the office in a few days. Let's talk then." As she put her phone away, her mother looked at her with a knowing smile. "You're finding your way back," she said. Maya smiled back, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known in a long time. "I think I am, Mom." She wasn't sure what the future held or what her next step would be, but for the first time in a while, Maya felt ready to face whatever came next, with a clearer sense of purpose and a deeper connection to herself. Maya returned to the office with a renewed sense of determination. The few days she spent at home with her mother had given her the clarity she needed to approach her work with a fresh perspective. She no longer felt trapped in a role that demanded everything from her without considering who she was. She had learned that true success wasn't just about accomplishments. It was about balance, about staying grounded even as the world around her moved at a rapid pace. The morning air was crisp as Maya walked into the towering building of Takeda Enterprises. She had a quiet confidence about her now, a new sense of self-awareness that made every step seem more deliberate. As she entered the office, she was greeted by the receptionist, and soon she was on her way up to Mr. Takeda's office. It had been a few days since she last received his message, and though she had been clear in her response, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something important was coming. When she walked into his office, he was already waiting, standing by the window as usual, his back to her. He turned when she entered, his sharp eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Maya, thank you for coming back so quickly," Mr. Takeda said, his tone serious but with a hint of respect. "We've hit a bit of a roadblock with the project, and I need your help to navigate through it." Maya nodded, sitting down across from him. "Of course. What's the situation?" Mr. Takeda walked over to the desk, pulling out a set of papers that seemed to be a new round of proposals. "We've encountered a situation with the international partners. There are discrepancies in the projected financials, and it seems like we're being misled. I need someone who can cut through the red tape and get to the heart of the matter." Maya studied him for a moment, her mind already analyzing the situation. "How can I help?" she asked, her voice steady. "You'll need to dig through the details of these proposals," Mr. Takeda replied. "You're the one who spotted the discrepancies in the contract before, and I trust your ability to spot issues others might miss." Maya's mind began working, her instincts kicking in. This was her chance to prove that she could handle the weight of this role, that she was more than capable of taking on such high-stakes challenges. "I'll get started right away," she said, her confidence radiating. As she left Mr. Takeda's office, she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with being given a new responsibility. But this time, it was different. She wasn't just a passive participant in the corporate world anymore. She was actively shaping the direction of the company. For the next few days, Maya worked tirelessly, reviewing the proposals and digging into the financial details. She spent hours in the office, her eyes scanning over pages of numbers, calculations, and terms, looking for any inconsistencies. Her mind was sharp, and she quickly uncovered several key issues: hidden fees, overestimated projections, and vague terms that could leave the company vulnerable if they moved forward with the deal. As Maya prepared her findings for a presentation to Mr. Takeda, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had done what others might have overlooked, and now she was about to present her analysis. The room was quiet when she stood in front of the executive team, her findings laid out in front of her. She had never spoken in front of such a large group, but the confidence she had gained in her new role gave her the strength to stand tall. As she spoke, explaining each of the discrepancies and showing how they could affect the company's future, she could feel the eyes of the room on her. But this time, it didn't intimidate her. She had earned her place. By the end of the presentation, the executives were nodding in agreement, and even Mr. Takeda seemed impressed by her thoroughness. "You've done excellent work, Maya," he said, his approval evident. "We'll make the necessary adjustments based on your findings." Maya smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over her. She had done it. She had proven her worth in this fast-paced world of business. But as the meeting came to a close and the team filed out, she couldn't help but feel that familiar twinge of doubt. She had accomplished so much, but was it enough? Was she truly becoming the person she wanted to be, or was she still just trying to prove something to herself? That night, as Maya walked back to her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that the pressure was mounting. The higher she climbed, the more she realized how much there was still to learn, how much she had yet to figure out. But she wasn't about to give up now. She had worked too hard to get here. The city lights illuminated her path as she entered her apartment. The familiar, quiet space greeted her, but for the first time in a while, Maya didn't feel at peace. She stood by the window, looking out at the bustling city below, her thoughts swirling. She had come so far, but now, the question loomed larger than ever. Was this the life she truly wanted, or was she just running on autopilot, too afraid to stop and figure it out? It was a question only she could answer. But for now, all she could do was keep moving forward. And when the time came, she would face whatever came next with the same determination that had gotten her this far. Maya felt a strange mix of emotions as she sat at her desk in the office the next day. The high of successfully presenting her findings and securing the deal with the investors still lingered, but something else was creeping in. She was beginning to realize that despite her achievements, the world she had immersed herself in felt colder, more demanding than she had expected. She had crossed a threshold into the corporate world, a world where every decision had a ripple effect, but now, she was starting to question whether the sacrifices she had made were worth it. She hadn't returned home for more than a few days since starting her new role, and the weight of isolation was beginning to take its toll. The apartment she had rented in the city, though sleek and modern, felt empty when she came home at night. The buzz of the office, the constant flow of meetings, and the challenges of negotiating contracts were all consuming her time, leaving little room for anything else. Was she losing herself in all of this? She thought back to the quiet days when she worked at the bistro, when life was simpler, and her days ended with a feeling of satisfaction from a job well done. Now, the work felt endless, and no matter how much she accomplished, it never seemed to be enough. As she stared out the window of her office, watching the city below, her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Mr. Takeda stepped into the room, his usual composed demeanor masking the subtle hint of urgency in his voice. "Maya, I need your help with something," he said, closing the door behind him. "There's a problem with our international expansion plan, and I need you to look into it. We're running out of time." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had barely begun to catch her breath from the last project, and now another one was already demanding her attention. "What's the issue?" she asked, setting her pen down and focusing all her attention on him. Mr. Takeda's expression was serious. "We've encountered resistance from a major partner overseas. They're pushing back on the terms of our agreement, and it's threatening to derail our entire strategy." Maya nodded, processing the information quickly. This wasn't just a minor hiccup. It was a critical situation that could have significant consequences for the company. "I'll start looking into it right away," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the pressure mounting in her chest. Mr. Takeda gave her a curt nod and left her office. Maya sat back in her chair, the weight of the new challenge settling on her shoulders. She had always prided herself on being able to handle anything that came her way, but this was different. The stakes were higher, and the time frame was tight. As she began to analyze the situation, reaching out to her contacts and reviewing the partnership agreements, she realized just how deep the issue ran. This wasn't just about a contractual disagreement. It was about trust, about the way the company had been perceived by its international partners. Maya spent the next several days immersed in the work, her focus unwavering as she dug into the details of the agreement. She worked late into the night, poring over legal documents, reaching out to contacts at the partner company, and drafting new strategies to present in the upcoming meeting. Her mind was sharp, and her attention to detail was unparalleled. But even with all the work she put in, there was still a nagging feeling that something was off. She couldn't shake the sense that this situation was a test not just of her professional abilities, but of her own limits. The more she worked, the more she realized that she was pushing herself to the brink. She was losing sleep, barely eating, and her personal life was slipping further and further away. She had told herself that this was temporary, that the sacrifices would be worth it, but now she was starting to wonder if that was true. Maya knew that if she didn't take a step back soon, she would burn out. The corporate world was relentless, and no matter how much she achieved, it seemed like there was always more to do, more to prove. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and phone calls, Maya found herself standing in front of her apartment building, staring at the lights of the city. She felt the exhaustion creeping in, but she also felt something else, a growing sense of uncertainty. Was she doing the right thing? Was this the life she wanted? She had achieved so much already, but it was all starting to feel like a never-ending cycle. She had to decide if she was willing to keep pushing forward or if she needed to step back and find balance again. As Maya entered her apartment and collapsed onto the couch, her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Takeda. "We have a meeting with the partner tomorrow. Prepare your findings." She looked at the message for a moment, then set her phone down. She knew what she had to do. There was no more time to waste. She had worked too hard to let this opportunity slip through her fingers. But as she sat in the quiet of her apartment, she knew deep down that something had to change. She couldn't keep living this way, constantly chasing the next project, the next deal, without ever taking a moment to breathe. Tomorrow would come, and she would face whatever came her way, but she promised herself that when the meeting was over, she would take a moment for herself. She wasn't sure what that would look like yet, but she knew she couldn't keep running without taking a pause to figure out who she really was and what she truly wanted. Maya stepped into the conference room the next day, feeling the familiar weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. The team had already gathered around the sleek, modern table, their faces a mixture of anticipation and caution. Mr. Takeda was sitting at the head, as usual, his expression focused, but there was something about today that felt different. This wasn't just another meeting to discuss contracts or negotiations. This was the moment that could determine the future of the company, and Maya was the one tasked with leading the charge. She had been working tirelessly over the past few days, reviewing every piece of information, every potential strategy to address the issues with the international partner. She had found the discrepancies in their projections, the hidden clauses, and the way they had tried to manipulate the terms of the deal. But as confident as she was in her findings, she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that lingered in the back of her mind. She wasn't just a part of the team anymore. She was leading it, and the pressure to succeed had never been higher. "Maya, we are all eager to hear your thoughts." Mr. Takeda's voice broke through her thoughts, steady and calm, but with an edge of urgency. Maya took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room, her mind briefly flashing back to the quiet moments she had spent reflecting on her life. She had been so focused on proving herself, on climbing the corporate ladder, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to simply breathe, to take a step back and reassess her priorities. But there was no time for doubt now. She had made it this far, and now she had to show everyone, including herself, that she was capable of handling whatever came her way. "I've reviewed the latest figures and contract terms thoroughly," she began, her voice clear and confident. "There are several areas where we're being misled, and the terms as they stand could pose a significant risk to the company. I've outlined the key issues here." She clicked a button on the presentation remote, and a chart appeared on the screen behind her, highlighting the discrepancies in the financial projections and the terms that were too vague. As she walked through her findings, she could feel the eyes of the room on her, their attention fixed on every word she said. The pressure was mounting, but she stood tall, determined to keep her composure. She knew that her analysis was solid. She had spent countless hours digging into the details, and she had spotted things that no one else had. The room was silent as she finished her presentation, the weight of the situation hanging heavily in the air. Mr. Takeda was the first to speak. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, his voice filled with approval. "You've caught every issue and laid it out clearly. We'll need to renegotiate the terms based on your findings." Maya nodded, her mind already racing with next steps. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But as the meeting continued, Maya realized something. Despite the success of the presentation, she wasn't feeling the satisfaction she expected. She had solved the problem, but it wasn't enough. The work, the constant grind, was starting to wear on her. She felt as if she was losing touch with the things that had once mattered. She wasn't sure if it was the constant pressure of corporate life or the fear of becoming someone she didn't recognize, but there was a nagging feeling inside her that she couldn't shake. "Maya, you did an excellent job today," Mr. Takeda said as the meeting wrapped up. "You've proven that you belong here. And I'm proud of your work." His words were kind, but they didn't quite reach her. She smiled and nodded, thanking him, but her thoughts were elsewhere. As she walked out of the conference room, the weight of the day's events felt heavy on her. She had done what was expected of her. She had performed. But in the quiet of the hallway, she realized that something was missing. She had succeeded, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her back to reality. It was a message from her mother. "Maya, I know things have been busy for you, but I think it's time you take a step back and really think about what you want. You've been working so hard, but you've been running from something." Maya paused, reading the message, the familiar ache of her past resurfacing. Her mother was right. Maya had been running. She had been so focused on her career, on proving that she could succeed in a world that had always felt foreign to her, that she had neglected the most important thing, herself. She had worked hard to build a new life, but now she was starting to realize that success didn't feel as fulfilling as she had imagined. She had been so determined to prove herself to others that she had forgotten to check in with her own heart. The next few days were filled with a whirlwind of meetings and follow-ups, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within her. She had gained the respect of her colleagues, but at the same time, she was losing touch with the person she had once been. The need for validation, the constant drive to climb higher, was starting to feel hollow. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, her phone rang again. It was Mr. Takeda. "Maya, I need you to come to the office tomorrow. There's something else I need to discuss with you." Maya hesitated before responding. She had always been the one to step up, to take on the challenges. But now, as she looked at her reflection in the window, she wondered if it was time for a different approach. "I'll be there tomorrow," she replied, her voice steady. But deep down, she knew that the conversation she was about to have wasn't just about business. It was about the future. And, for the first time, Maya wasn't sure if she was ready to keep moving forward in the same way. She wasn't sure if success, at least the kind she had been chasing, was enough anymore. Maya stood in the elevator, her thoughts swirling as it ascended toward Mr. Takeda's office. The weight of the past few days had started to press down on her more heavily than ever before. She had made a name for herself, proven her worth in the corporate world, but now she was starting to question if all of this was worth the cost. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder of the message she had received from Mr. Takeda earlier that day. "Maya, I need you to come to the office tomorrow. There's something else I need to discuss with you." She had agreed without hesitation, but now, standing in the sleek, glass-walled building, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was shifting in her life. It was as if she was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into the familiar, polished environment of the office floor. The bustling energy of the place was the same, yet everything felt different now. She had been so focused on proving herself to others, but now, Maya realized, she had been ignoring the most important person in the equation, herself. As she walked to Mr. Takeda's office, her mind raced. She had put her heart and soul into the work, but now she wondered if it was enough. She had built her career from scratch, but at what cost? She had lost touch with the person she used to be, and the pressure to succeed was starting to feel unbearable. When she entered the office, Mr. Takeda was standing by the window, staring out over the city. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his expression as calm and composed as ever. "Maya," he said, his voice steady, "I'm glad you're here." "What's going on?" Maya asked, trying to keep the uncertainty from her voice. Mr. Takeda motioned for her to sit, his eyes focused as he spoke. "I've been thinking about the future of the company and the direction we need to take. We're at a critical juncture, and I need someone I trust to take charge of a new project." Maya's heart skipped a beat. Another project? She had just finished one, and now another was being thrust onto her. She had proven herself with the international deal, but now Mr. Takeda was asking her to take on even more. "What kind of project?" she asked, her mind still reeling from the pressure. Mr. Takeda's gaze softened just slightly, and there was a moment of silence before he answered. "We're looking to expand our operations into new markets, but it's a risky move. I need you to lead the team that will handle the research, the negotiations, and the strategy for entering these new territories." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. The challenge was enormous. This wasn't just another contract to negotiate. This was the kind of project that could make or break the company. It was the kind of responsibility that could change everything. "This is a big responsibility," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sure I'm ready for this?" Mr. Takeda walked over to her, his expression serious. "Maya, you've already proven yourself. Your work has been exceptional. I'm confident that you have the skills to lead this project." His words were a reassurance, but they didn't ease the weight on her shoulders. This was more than she had bargained for. She was being asked to lead, to make decisions that would affect the company's future. It was a daunting task, and the pressure was suffocating. "I understand," Maya said, her voice firm, but inside, she was unsure. This was the moment she had been working toward, the moment she had been waiting for. But was she ready? Could she really handle the weight of such a crucial responsibility? As the days passed, Maya threw herself into the new project. She spent long hours at the office, poring over data, researching potential markets, and meeting with the new team she was now leading. The work was intense, and the stakes were high, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She was doing everything she had been trained to do, everything she had learned during her years in the corporate world, but the satisfaction she expected wasn't there. There was a constant nagging feeling in the back of her mind, telling her that this wasn't the life she wanted. The corporate world was demanding, yes, but it was also draining her. The pressure to succeed, to prove herself, was consuming every aspect of her life. She had lost touch with the things that once brought her joy, the small moments of peace that used to mean so much. One evening, after yet another long day at the office, Maya returned home and stood in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at her felt foreign, like she didn't quite recognize the person she had become. The woman in the mirror was successful, confident, and powerful, but she was also tired. Tired of the constant grind, tired of living up to expectations, and tired of running from her past. She had achieved so much, but at what cost? Maya knew that she couldn't keep going on this way. She had to make a choice. She had worked so hard to get here, but now, she needed to figure out if this was the life she wanted. The woman she had become was strong, but she also needed to be true to herself. As she stood in the quiet of her apartment, Maya made a decision. She would continue to lead the project, but she would do it on her terms. She wasn't going to lose herself in the process. It was time to find balance. The next day, Maya went into the office with a new sense of purpose. She was going to take control of her future, but she would do it in a way that didn't sacrifice who she was. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face it, no matter what came her way. Maya stood by the large window in her office, gazing at the city below, its lights twinkling like 1,000 little stars in the night. The past few weeks had been a blur of meetings, decisions, and sleepless nights. She had thrown herself into the project, determined to make it a success. But as the days passed, something began to shift inside her. The drive to succeed, the ambition to climb higher, it was no longer enough. The pressures of the corporate world, the constant need to prove herself, had started to take a toll. She had done what she thought was necessary to reach the top, but at what cost? She had lost sight of herself along the way. She had been so focused on achieving success that she had neglected to ask herself what that success truly meant. The internal conflict had been building for days, but tonight, standing at the window, Maya realized that she could no longer ignore it. She had to make a choice, not just for her career, but for her happiness. The phone on her desk buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Takeda. "Maya, the final meeting with the partners is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I need you to be ready to present the final strategy." The words on the screen felt heavy. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, but now, with everything in front of her, she wasn't sure if it was the right path anymore. She had come so far, but at what point did she stop running? At what point did she start living for herself, rather than just for the next goal? Maya sat back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment, and breathed deeply. She thought back to her time at the bistro, to the moments when she was just a waitress, free of the weight of high expectations and the constant pressure to succeed. Back then, life had felt simpler. She had been happy, even if she hadn't known it at the time. But somewhere along the way, the simplicity had slipped through her fingers, replaced by a relentless pursuit of more. More recognition, more success, more validation. Maya opened her eyes and looked at her phone. She had already made her decision. She would go through with the meeting tomorrow, but she wasn't going to let it define her anymore. She would give her best, as she always did, but she would also make room for the parts of herself she had buried in the process. The work she had done was important, but so was her well-being. She had to find a balance, one where she could succeed without losing herself in the process. The next morning, Maya walked into the meeting with her head held high, her demeanor calm but focused. The partners were already seated around the table, their eyes on her as she began to present the strategy. She spoke confidently, outlining the key points, answering their questions with precision. But this time, something was different. Maya no longer felt the need to prove herself. She didn't need their approval to validate her worth. As she finished her presentation, she could see the shift in their expressions, respect, acknowledgement, and maybe even a hint of admiration. The meeting wrapped up with a sense of accomplishment, and Mr. Takeda gave her a small, approving nod. "Well done, Maya," he said, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. Maya smiled, but it wasn't the same smile she had worn in the past. This one was different, softer, more authentic. She had done it, but it wasn't just about the success anymore. It was about finding peace with the journey she had been on, and knowing that she was finally stepping into her own. As she left the conference room, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The weight of the world had been lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control. The corporate world would always have its demands, but she had learned that it didn't have to consume her. She could achieve what she wanted without sacrificing her happiness or her sense of self. That evening, after the meeting, Maya went home and spent the night alone in her apartment, reflecting on everything that had led her here. She had changed, yes, but it wasn't just the role or the success that had shaped her. It was the realization that she could be both ambitious and true to herself, that she didn't have to lose sight of who she was in order to succeed. As the city lights flickered outside her window, Maya felt a quiet sense of contentment settle over her. She was ready for whatever came next, but this time, she was going to approach it on her own terms. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought her exactly where she needed to be, at peace with herself and with her choices. In this heartfelt journey of self-discovery and ambition, follow the story of Maya, a young woman who rises through the corporate world while struggling to maintain her true identity. As she faces the pressures of success, Maya is forced to reevaluate her path and find a balance between achieving her professional goals and staying true to herself. Her journey is one of the most touching stories you will hear, filled with emotional highs and moments of clarity that remind us all of the importance of staying grounded. As Maya takes on leadership roles, navigates difficult business decisions, and proves her worth in a high-stakes environment, her internal conflict builds. These touching stories of personal and professional growth are sure to resonate with anyone who's ever faced a crossroads in life. Maya's story highlights how we all can find strength in overcoming obstacles, but also the importance of not losing sight of what truly matters. Whether in business or personal life, her experience serves as a reminder that the most touching stories often come from those who dare to take risks and face the unknown. Maya's transformation is a powerful example of how touching stories can help us understand that success is not just about achievements, but about staying true to our values and our heart.